Hey, what's up? In this video, we're going to be walking through all of the color controls and color screen. It's all pretty self-explanatory, but just so you have the information, here we go. So basically, depending on what kind of layers you have selected, you will or you won't see a little palette in the top left of your home screen showing you what the current fill and stroke is if it has those properties, and then also this little button here that can swap back and forth between the fill and stroke. Click off this layer just so you can see we did toggle to the stroke. Select it again, and I just want to see the fill color for now. So if you have no active composition, you're going to see this no active comp because there's no properties that can be changed. So as long as you have a composition that's active, you'll probably see some sort of color controls, with the caveat being that you won't see color controls on adjustment layers unless it's the fill effect, movie layers, or images if they don't have any kind of color properties. So let's jump in and take a look at the color screens and actual color controls. So again, you just have a preview. I have just a composition selected, so I'm going to see the background composition selected. I have a composition with the fill effect on it, so I'm going to see a little preview for that. I have a shape layer selected. I'm going to see a preview of the fill and the stroke. And I have a text layer selected, and I'll also see a preview of the fill and the stroke. So if I wanted to change this, I can just click this little arrow. It works for any of the layers that does have a stroke and fill that you can swap. And that is basically the extent of the previews on the home screen. So if you click either of these palettes on whatever kind of layers you have selected, it's going to open on up to the color screen, which is going to give you ways for you to customize the color that you're working with or the property that you're trying to change. So the first thing we're going to cover is just the little eyedropper icon in the top left. It's pretty easy. Just click and hold, and you can sample any kind of color you want in After Effects, outside of After Effects. Any color that's on your monitor can be sampled. So this is even like images from the internet and stuff. Super helpful, and a nice quick way for you to kind of sample colors or properties. And you can do a lot more with that, but that's just like the simple explanation. So click, hold, and drag. When you have a color you like and the preview looks good, just release the click and it's going to sample that color to the layer. That is the eyedropper tool. So you probably saw in this left hand side is going to show you a preview of what the color was, and on the right hand side it's going to show you a preview of what the color is changing to in this little eyedropper. So it's a nice way for you to kind of like check out what the contrast is you're changing to, and once you're happy with it you can just drop it and it gets added to the layer. So next we're going to have these little labels up at the top here, and a little palette that's going to show you a preview of what the current status and color is, very similar to the color and status that's on the home screen. So if you wanted to change the fill, you just click the fill, it's going to turn blue. If you wanted to change the stroke, you click that and that's going to turn blue. That's indicating what is the active property that you're trying to change. So on this fill color, we're pretty happy with it. And maybe we actually wanted to swap the fill and stroke, so we'll click these little arrows and get that swap to happen. It's exactly like the tool on the home screen, so it's just like a second way for you to kind of click it if you do want. So fill, stroke properties, swap icon. On this far right here we have the exit button, which is just going to return you back to the home screen. And as long as you're on the color screen, you're going to be able to work with stuff. So if you had the color screen open, you switch the layer, it's going to live update and show you a preview of that. If you have the composition selected, you're going to see that we only have a fill effect we can change. If you have a background layer to a composition selected, you're going to see this little BG preview. Or if you have multiple layers selected, you can also change the colors like that, which is just a nice handy way to work with color in After Effects. Kind of more like Illustrator and less like After Effects, which is a win. So yeah, let's take a look at this little circle graph here. This basically just, again, just a kind of different way for you to visualize color in something that's a little bit nicer than the standard rectangle. And what's nice about this is the sliders, and I'll explain those in a second. Just click and hold this little circle and drag it around to sample a color. When you're happy with the color, just release it and it's going to get pulled onto the layer. While you're clicking and holding, you're going to still see that left side. The orange right there is what the color is, and on the right side a preview of what you're changing it to, just so you can check out your contrast and if things are going to work all right, and just make sure you wind up with a color that you're happy with. So next let's take a look at this middle bar, which is kind of like your palette controls, and you can see here we actually have some defaults. So if you want to add colors or maybe work with a different palette, you actually have this little folder icon here you can click, and it's going to open your palette screen. So I've already pre-imported a whole bunch of palettes and created some. If you see any of the palettes with this little blue outline, it just means that that's the active palette on the home screen. So maybe we want to work with fall colors. I'll just click this palette, it's going to turn blue. When I return to the home screen, we're going to see we have our nice fall colors preview right here. So I'll select the layers and just make them all look nice and fall, and we'll continue working with this. So now that I've had this palette loaded, maybe I want to keep adding to it. Maybe 5 colors just isn't enough for me, so I maybe want this nice blue color. I'll just click this little plus, it gets added to our palette here, and then also back on our palette screen it's going to get added to this as a saved kind of file. You can close this and reopen it and it's going to still be there, so you don't have to worry about things being lost. So we'll add another color here and just keep adding some cool colors to our palettes, and eventually we're going to see this little arrow that pops up to the right hand side. So this is kind of like your overflow palettes. If you click this, it's just going to open up all of the palettes as well as the name, and you can work with this, but then you do hide the little circle graph. If you want to see it again, you just toggle back down your palettes and it's back to normal. So we can click into our folder and you're going to see our fall colors now has a ton of really bad colors added to it, which is perfect. So we'll return back to the home screen here, and maybe we've added so many colors that we're really not happy with the palettes anymore. So I'm going to just select them. You're going to get this little white corner dot thing. You can click delete. It's going to get removed from our palette. Delete, removed from the palette. Delete, removed from the palette. And now we don't have as many crazy colors in our palette screen. So that's, again, nice little easy way to work with it. If you'd like to pull any of these palettes onto a layer or property, just select the layer, double click whatever color it is that you want to change, and you're going to be able to adjust that pretty quick. So maybe now I want to actually work with my stroke over here. So I'll just go over here, add this nice dark color on the outside, and then turn down my width actually, because that was like a very thick width. So we'll just kind of hide the transparency grid in the background so we can see what we're doing. Zoom in here, you're going to see we have a nice stroke on the outside. I can select my text layer again. Maybe we want that nice green look, and then these sliders basically are able to change the colors again. So we're going to have our first slider just being the kind of hue that you're changing through. So I really like this slider right up here, because if you notice, we're just going to basically be going in a nice circle. So it's very similar to like color theory. When you're going in a circle, you're going to stay with very similar kind of properties. So yeah, this nice little 360 visualizer, it's pretty cool. So we like this color, we can save it, pretty intuitive. All right, so let's take a look at these sliders down here. Again, this is going to change just a little bit depending on what kind of stuff you have selected. So just go back to our full view so we can see all of our different layers. We'll select our shape layer again, and let's take a look at this first slider. So this is going to be your hue, which is kind of like a 360-degree rotation just around that point of the circle. So you're staying within the same brightness and saturation, which is really, really nice and handy. So this is the first slider, is just hue. If you'd like to edit any of these values directly, just click them. It'll open up a little preview and press enter when you're happy with that number to change that value. The second slider we'll look at is just saturation. Depending on where it's at, you're going to be increasing or decreasing the saturation. You're going to get this nice little preview kind of showing you how bright the value is, and this is a nice way to kind of visualize kind of where you are. And then when you go back to hue, your little circle is going to have a smaller radius, so you're going to be in kind of a different like color theory spectrum. I'm not sure if those are the right words, but hopefully that makes some sense. So this last slider we'll look at is just the brightness. If you want darker colors or brighter colors, you just kind of change that value. And the bottom slider here is actually for transparency, so you'll still get a preview in your little left and right sides here. Just kind of shows you what the color transparency is going to be, and that's just, again, kind of handy. If you had a stroke property selected, you're actually going to get one extra slider here. So why don't we actually just make a black stroke on the outside and increase the width. So we'll make this like 18, looks pretty good. We can click this. If you want to have a value bigger than 30, you just have to press enter and type it in yourself, and that's going to be like the maximized stroke width value. So if you do want to go higher than 50, of course you can just enter that value. If you want it to go to like 1,000 or something crazy, you're welcome to enter those kind of values and it'll still work. We'll just put this at 8 because why not? So let's take a look at this bottom bar. You're going to get a hex code number for whatever kind of color you have selected. It's just going to change. If you want to see that kind of preview here, we'll select the fill here, go back, and there we go. We have all these different color values that we can use in other places if we want. If you want to copy and paste it or enter a value yourself, just click it. You're going to get the same kind of entry field. Press enter when you're happy with it to kind of change the color in whatever way you want. So next you have these little icons over here, which are going to just be like your default values you'd expect to find in maybe Illustrator. So you have like your white color, the black color, and then a disable kind of slash, which just disables the fill effect. If you want to disable the stroke effect, you can do the same thing. And then if you wanted to add a color, it just will automatically return on this disabled option. So super nice and handy. If you have the composition selected, that's the only one that's going to have some different options at the bottom. So instead of the disabled icon, you're going to see a transparency grid toggle, very similar to this button. You can click over here, but we just added this because like why add extra mileage to your mouse? So you can just click this to turn on or off your transparency grid. One other thing to cover is actually on the palette screen. So just click the little folder icon. And if you wanted to just create a new blank palette, just click this new palette button. You can actually rename these palettes as well. So just click them, the text, and then you can enter some new value. Press enter when you're happy with it. It's going to be reflected. You can also rename imported palette. So maybe this is now like forest sand or something. Press enter. It's saved. Nice easy way to work with the palettes. So if you want to import an ASE file, just click this little import button, and assuming that you have files, you can just import them directly into the panel. So I'll show you where you can grab them. If you go on over to this colors.adobe.com/explore, this is one of my favorite resources just for finding cool color palettes. So when you're happy with them, you can download them, and or you can search the library for like some cool trends. This is a really phenomenal Adobe resource. They updated it super regularly, and it's a great way just to kind of stay up to date on what kind of colors are popular. So once you've downloaded some ASE files, just click this little import button. I'm going to grab these 3 ASEs I just downloaded and open them, and they're going to get added to the top of our palettes here. I'll rename this one Global Citizen. Spelled a little bit wrong, but that's basically how you work with colors. So just click it, turns blue, and now this Global Citizen is added to our home screen. So in a nutshell, this is how you work with color, or at least how you work with color screens in 360 degrees. Hope you dig it. We're going to be adding a lot more stuff to this color screen. That's just stage 1. So let us know your thoughts. Thanks again. See ya.